Judy and I are professional women. We are very busy. Both of us uh, are busy leading a very purposeful life. And yes, we have our own businesses. I have my foundation. I also am the legal shield lady. Judy's is wonderful cardio wellness group. But what we both have started really enjoying is this community. We've been doing it for more than 3+ years now. Every month we wait for the first Wednesday of the month because that's the time we come and say hi to our community and we bring in a great speaker. Right, Judy? I can vouch for the fact that this is the best part of the month, right?
Absolutely. We are so fortunate that all of you have joined us today. We know that taking an hour out of your busy schedule has to be something that has value in it. And I know that today's guest speaker has that value. I want to just talk about a little bit about Dr. Jake before he takes over, because I think it's important to know some of the good things about people that are speaking to us. Dr. Jake is a medical care provider, and he emphasizes on the treatment of the management of chronic pain, physical medicine, internal medicine, botanical medicine, really all of it. He works with individuals, medical practitioners, and he's even been an expert witness, which we're going to have to talk about someday, Dr. Jake. But really, he's got the credentials, absolutely. But I want to tell you about the Dr. Jake that I know. Dr. Jake is so enthusiastic. He's a dedicated natural doctor, and he's got such passion about unlocking the human potential of each and every person that he touches, not just clients and providers, but people that he meets over LinkedIn and people that he is fravors with. So welcome, Dr. Jake, to our platform today. And we are so happy that you are joining us, and you can just take it away.
Thank you, Judy. I'm assuming everybody can hear me okay. Good. I just got a thumbs up from Guinea. I really appreciate the invitation to speak here. And this miracle of the internet is in many ways dividing our communities and cultures, but also bringing us together. And so we are here on the positive end of that. And because of that, I'm really grateful because you have invited me and I get to express a certain part of myself that might be of some help. And Judy has given me a list of questions, so that's how I'm going to kind of go through the talk. But the first question was, what are my unique gifts and dreams? And I've always been, or at least considered myself a visionary, meaning I've always seen trends, seem to have seen trends coming from coming ahead of time. And I'm also a good navigator. And I don't mean that by how am I going to get to my neighbor's house or how am I going to travel across the country, but I'm a good navigator in terms of getting to where I have been putting the map of my life. I've always been lucky to have good jobs. And one of the most formative jobs that I have as a man, I did as a youth, as a boy turning into a young man from about the age of 7th grade, 12, 13-ish years old. I had to get permission from my parents. All the way through the end of college, I was a caddy on a golf course. And this was all through the 80s to give you a time frame. So much of my story today, I'm going to talk about this job that I had. And because of the time frame, most of the golfers were men. So this is why there will be men. But it ties into entrepreneurship. And I think part of the mission of this group is empowering entrepreneurs as part of the free spirit of the American dream. One of my mentors was my Uncle Bob, and he told me a couple things. One is he told me you can do whatever you want in your life, and I always believed that to be true. But that doesn't necessarily make things easier because we have to choose what and where we want. And the other thing that he told me is if you keep picking your nose, it's going to grow big like mine. And it turns out that we have the exact same nose. So, but anyway, one of my first jobs was as a caddy. And I literally, I don't know how many times I got around the links, but it was at a small, very good quality golf course built by Jack Nicklaus in Western Pennsylvania. And a phenomenal course from a golfer's perspective. And I, as a young man, got to carry the golf bags of many, many, many different types of professionals. And I would have to say that the group of men that was having the most fun on the golf course of all of the other professions were the dentists. Now, dentists have a good job in many ways. They're relatively independent still to this day. Many of them get to make their own schedule. They have a good amount of income and also a lot of stress. So these guys were having a lot of fun and enjoying themselves on the golf course. So it occurred to me one day, because I was caddying for a bunch of dentists, these guys are having fun, and it made it fun for me. And I started observing who are the people that are enjoying themselves on the golf course. And I realized that the majority of them, not all of them, owned their own businesses. And what I attributed it to at that young age was, wow, I think they have control over their time because they're out here on a Tuesday afternoon, or they're, and so I noticed, and so from an early age, I always thought I want to be in charge of my time, and to do that, I want to be an entrepreneur. And there are many types of entrepreneurs. But in the time dependent, I'm going to talk about 5 different guys. One was, and I'm going to use their real names because it's an honor to them. I would say most of them were in their late 40s, early 50s, or maybe a little older at this time in the 80s. So I would imagine many of them are no longer with us. So I'll honor them with their names. Hal Wrigley, he was a dentist and a Vietnam vet. He was a Green Beret in Vietnam, and he had a peacefulness about him. He was a tall guy and lanky frame, and he walked with a gait that was nonchalant. It was carefree and elegant, and he could hit the ball a mile, and he always had a smile on his face, and he was fun. And we had some deep conversations. At one point in time, I would say probably in my later high school years, Hal Wrigley made a gamble. He mortgaged his entire house and his entire practice to take a loan out to roll the dice on a product. And he started going to China on these business trips, and he'd come back and he'd tell me about China. And it turns out that his gamble paid off. And what he did was he bought the patent and started the manufacturing process for, at this time, Sears and Roebuck's largest selling product of all time. It was that little wrench that automatically adjusted. And Hal Wrigley became a multi-millionaire. He built a very large mansion by the golf course. And he always had, and what I really admired about him is that he saw it and he was willing to risk it all. And of course, if it would have failed, he would have still been a dentist. But anyway, I really liked Hal. Owen Yeckley. Owen Yeckley was one of the older gentlemen. I would say he would have been in his mid-60s. He was fun to caddy for. He knew your name, he knew my name, and he was always interested. And he was one of the easiest guys to caddy for because he didn't hit the ball very far, but he hit it straight. And he'd say, you know what, Jake, I'm lucky. And I can't hit it long, but I can hit it straight. And so and he was always in a good mood. And I would say, and all of the people liked him. And I would say that he was, and he paid nicely. He was the easiest person from a labor perspective to caddy for. And I felt a love for him, and I think a lot of other people did, because there was this genuine care, and I could see that when he brought clients, it extended all the way through that. So those are two kind of success stories. And I want to talk about a couple of other guys who in business were successful, but I don't know if they were in their lives for various reasons. Um, and I'm not going to use their first names, but I will use their last names, although I think these gentlemen have probably passed. Mr. Gilson, he owned an engineering firm. And he was very technically savvy, smart guy, friendly, nice. But he was plagued with worry all on the golf course. Worry, worry, worry. Everywhere we went, there was worry. And he had back trouble, and he had tendonitis in his arms. And I was not a medical doctor at the time, but I often wondered, is this guy worrying himself all the time everywhere we went? And he was a pretty good golfer, but it just uh, anyway, that's the brief story of him. Next gentleman I'm going to talk about, Mr. Wolf, whom I thought was the richest man on the golf course. And he was a loud, burly type. He had his own jet airplane, very wealthy man, and grumpy and driven, highly driven. And I remember I asked him one time, because I was curious, Mr. Wolf, when somebody's in a job interview with you, what do you want to hear from them? Because I must have been in college or thinking professionally at this time and wanting to get some advice. And I always asked the guys for advice. Was one of the best parts of this job. And he gave me a true answer that I'm sure worked for him. But he said, he had a rough voice. When I am interviewing somebody, I want to hear them say one thing. I want to hear them say, I want to make money. I want my people to want to make money, because he wanted them to be driven. And I got the sense that he wasn't a great person to work for. I saw him personally throw 2 clubs at caddies out of frustration, not on them, but for his own frustration for his own ball that he didn't hit. And one time, the group of men that he was with were dentists. He was golfing with dentists, and those dentists didn't the first time it was ugly, but the second time those dentists said, what are you doing? You can't do that. And they razzed him, not only for the rest of that day on the course, but weeks later I would hear them saying, you don't throw golf clubs at people. Anyway, Mr. Wolf. Last guy, I'm not going to say his name because he may still be alive, but Mr. Wolf was not the richest man in the golf club. This other man was. I won't say his name. He never took a caddy. He always had a cart. And he wasn't particularly friendly, nor was he particularly smart, but he was probably what the equivalent of what we would have, say today, as a billionaire or even a multi-billionaire. Because right next to Dr. Wrigley's mansion, he built a castle. You could see the castle from the 14th fairway. It was this immense structure, and it is to this day the largest residential structure in the entire state of Pennsylvania, which is the 4th biggest state. An immense structure. He brought art in and statues from ancient Greece. It was, I don't want to say a monstrosity, but I can also tell that he wasn't a particularly happy guy. So those are 4 gentlemen. I led with the men that I admired and kind of highlighted. So I also saw as a young man that just because we have a success in our business doesn't necessarily mean that we have success and health in our lives. Judy, how much time do I have left?
About 3 or 4 minutes.
Okay. So next question. What characteristics did I use to achieve where I am now? Well, I'm very diligent. And I am diligent because I know how to navigate and I know how to work for what I want. So, and that is an expression of myself. So when I'm working for what I want, I can work hard, but it doesn't feel hard. Um, I, as an adult, wanted to learn to play music. As a kid, I was not musical. I couldn't sing. One of you got, I was a terrible singer, and I always thought if I could play the flute, I could sing. And so I worked extremely hard to do that, and now I can play and sit in with simple folk music, which is kind of what I like to play. And then another time as an older man, I was at in my early 40s at a dinner party, and they were playing the game, if you could do anything you would want in your life that you don't know how to do now, what would you do? And I said I would learn to surf, and everybody laughed. And I realized right then and there, surfing was, I have to do it. I'm alive. And so in my early 40s, I taught myself how to surf. So I am diligent, and because surfing has opened up so many perspectives in my life, because I can use water metaphors, which are extremely useful in business, it opens up nonverbal intelligences, and it gets me to meet people whom I would otherwise not get to meet in my normal circle of life. So how am I living it? The third question Judy asked. I am creating a life that I want. Largely, that means online these days. And there's an old saying, if you build it, they will come. But in today's day and age, you have to be visible, or maybe they won't come. Um, I get to live a life of joy and enthusiasm and acceptance. And what I'm realizing is that it is not becoming or being about me, but about service to others. And when we serve others, a part of us has to surrender. And there is a surrendering. And I have a vision of elevating the condition of humanity because we can all live better lives. And so I'll just wrap things up by saying if you are successful, is what you're doing working for you? Hopefully it is. And how do we experience what we do meaningfully? I think that there has to be an element of purpose, an element of flow, which is what surfing taught me. And also, one of the things I am doing now is resolving to take care of myself mentally, physically, emotionally. And because I'm a solopreneur at the moment, I don't have a big team behind me. So if I get sick or if I'm not able to work, I have to really be cautious about taking care of myself over the long term. I saw a video of a raccoon that got into an owl's nest at night, and that owl had to defend its livelihood, and it did it in a way that didn't risk its health or its wellness. It used its stealth property of flying silently, and it flew silently and real quickly just jolted the raccoon and was gone before the raccoon even knew what hit it, and that raccoon got out of the nest. So the message is how to take care of myself. I think part of what we need to do in our lives is focus on intent, because that very much ties into the story that we tell ourselves about what we're doing. And I like to end with a quote from W.H. Auden, the poet. If we really want to live, we'd better start at once to try. I can tell you from my experience as a clinician, as working in hospice for over 2 years, that these lives that we live go very quickly. And so I would like to encourage you all to live your best life. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, Dr. Jake, thank you so much. The lessons in what you talked about were amazing. You know, with the golf, with the diligence and having fun. And for me, that's so important, is to have fun. If you're not having fun, find a way to have fun.
I can tell you guys have a lot of fun. And
We do have a lot of fun.
when I'm
Yes, we
surfing,
do.
because sometimes it's cold, I have a saying: if I'm not having fun, I'm done. Time to get out of the water.
Dr. Jake, I'm having fun on my phone, but I was having fun trying to take notes because what an incredible lessons you taught us. You as a caddy learn from the people, and thank you for being so authentic. Their stories, I kind of started relating to each of your people on the golf course and saying, I understand you're very wealthy, but if you're grumpy, who wants that wealth? Not me. Not me. I don't want to be around you. But yes, the vision and the people who could have fun, and nobody wants the golf course, the to be thrown at you. Yes, nobody wants that. But you have done an incredible job. And what I remember about Dr. Jake, when you and me had a cup of tea, the Zoom tea, is Dr. Jake not, he loves to have his mobike. Yes, he always carry a cup of tea. And today I have my prime bottle. I'm drinking some electrolytes. He went on a motorbike, Judy, he went on a bike trip, and he has traveled a lot of India, went up all the way up to the mountains on his bike. So I said, oh my God, this guy I want to be friends with. And since then, by the way, this is my little nudge to my community. If you have not connected with Dr. Jake on LinkedIn, please do it right now. Follow his posts because they are very driven by facts, research. They are not just flimsy few words here and there. Very research-oriented posts, very driven by diligence. You can see the man behind it, right? So about so many topics which are relevant to all of us for our own health and wellness. So please become friends with Dr. Jake, follow him, have a one-on-one cup of tea with him, and yes, learn a lot from this guy with the mission and wisdom about health and wellness. Judy will agree with me. That's the reason we are friends, right, Judy?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we do have questions online. Dr. Jake, I didn't even say your last name. I apologize so much. It's such a beautiful name. It's Dr. Jake Felice. And yes, he is on LinkedIn. He can be there. And Dr. Jake, if you'd like to put some contact information in the chat,
Sure.
that would be great. Look at that. Someone just put your information in the chat. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful.
So
Thank you.
much, Jocelyn. That's amazing. And do we have any questions for Dr. Jake? We have just a couple minutes before we get together and talk to each other again. But any questions for Dr. Jake?
Can I ask? Oh,
Harumi, yes. Oh, you just
Harumi,
muted
you're muted.
yourself. Harumi, you just muted yourself.
okay, thank you. Yeah, I have to. My voice is coming from iPhone. So,
Okay.
Dr. Jack, thank you very much. Yeah, I did some what a caddy when I was high school. It was fun. But so when you're tag along with those professional, well, those people, did you become one point you wanted to play golf professionally or something like that? Or how did you take it? They're doing so, I don't know.
Oh, great question. Great question. I never, ever wanted to become a professional golfer because I was so terrible at golfing. It was embarrassingly bad. I've hit the golf ball perfectly one time in my life, and it was such a great feeling that I know why people love their golf. But I lived near the golf course, and what I liked two things about the job, well, several things about the job. One is I could walk to work. So if I didn't have a car when I started, that was important. And two, I learned the tricks of the golf. So I learned a lot about golf by observing, and I could tell if at a certain place the hole played long or if it played short. I knew because I had been through hundreds of times and I could usually help the men shave a point or two off of their game. So I was useful to them. I very much enjoyed that. But the thing that I enjoyed most, Hiromi, was when you're a caddy, is first come, first serve. So there's a list at the caddy shack. And because I was close and I'm normally an early riser, I could get there early and say, for example, on the weekends, there were always, there's another lesson I learned. There were always a couple guys ahead of me that were just almost crazy diligent that would get there so early you could never beat them. So I would usually be either the third or the fourth person there, which meant that I would go out with the second crew. And on the weekends, I'd be done by 11:30. And I'd have, in the 80s, I'd have $40 cash in my pocket. My friends would just, my high school friends would just be waking up, a lot of them. And I'll have already done a day's work. But also, if I did not want to go to work, if my friend said we're going to go to the lake or we're going to go to the pool, I didn't have to go to work and I didn't have to ask permission. You just don't go. So that's what I loved about being a caddy is you've got to be diligent and you can make money, but if you don't want to go, you can take a day off or a weekend off.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, that's already.
But you know, I mean, I'm terrible at golf. I mean, I can putt pretty well.
Maybe you might think that way. Maybe it's different from us. Thank you.
Dr. Jake is very good at creating relationships, and his following on LinkedIn, if you see, it's in thousands, not. And because I can see why, because his wisdom and his research and his diligence shows in his posts, because he's mission oriented. He's on a mission to make a difference in people's lives for their health and wellness, because that is so important. If you're not healthy yourself, really, no amount of money can really bring you that peace and happiness without being into that space of health. So that's what I think, what attracted me with Dr. Jake in the beginning. And yes, we become friends for life, Anybody else with any questions? No? Okay, Judy, for our next session, do you want to remain in the room together or you want to create rooms? Today we've had a lot of...
Yes, absolutely. I think we can stay in the room. We do have some new people. And before we go into the room, Dr. Jake, I just want to thank you again and thank you for your transparency and some of the thoughts you had, not only as a young child, but even now today, and just some of the nuggets that you shared with us.